Freakiness is a part of life. Original Baraman along with the two bad, wicked youths of rap. Not a mercy, whoa.
What's the business? Talk paper when I'm riding by. They know it's drizzle, he the truth off the east side. I know who ain't got my money because they ducking high. I grind for me and mine. I got the green light. I got to get it how I live it. That means front line. I got them zips, I got that soft, I got that hard white.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the James Show. This is y'all host James. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. If you don't, I won't be a fan of you. I'm gonna get up a little share screen right now. If you're new to this channel, chiefly what we talk about is Teilhard de Chardin and why mental masturbation is good. Just joking. We're going to discuss a lot of things related to geopolitics, theology, philosophy on this channel. Check out my Librarium Comporium. On YouTube, you can check out pretty much everything I've already done. If I have done, in fact, a topic that you want me to do, but I've already done it, I'm not going to do it again. So I like to just do one topic once. I don't really care to do multiple topics. Again, like I don't want to just do the same thing again and again. Okay. Now I'm going to read a couple comments and we're going to get into the show. And yeah, I mean, everyone around here pretty much already knows how this whole thing works. So not super complicated. We have Slow Bois. What's up, Jeem? We're talking about Hellas today. Jordan. John says, I'm Greek Orthodox. I'm curious to see what Jeem has to say about us. Jeem time. Ahoy. It's way past my bedtime, he says. Sub and like. Yeah, subscribe. Don't come on here like some vampire sucking away my precious time and energy if you ain't going to subscribe. To Crook is 100% Hellenic. Is your sponsor Jeem Shadow Legends? That would be World of Genecraft. Know what that means. The Jeem verse. Yeah, it continues. Jayon. Hello, Herr Jeem. All right, I think we're just basically a bunch of nonsense. About 8 minutes into it, I want to wait until, maybe 10 minutes or so before we get into the real stuff. So if you have any questions, like now's the time. Otherwise, like that's kind of it. Rocking my hoodie today, y'all. Nice church on a lovely Greek island. Which one, though? Well, of the hundreds of islands, I don't know which island this is on. I just happened to pick images and put them as a thumbnail so that people aren't just staring at me the whole time. Jeem, do you still shower? Not with you. It's like a lifetime of doing the same thing over and over every day. Yeah, every day might be a little... Nobody said you had to every day. I don't work out every day. How many ancestors cried over Hellas being Christian? Yeah. Probably the same amount who cried about Egypt. Maybe I try to part my hair a little bit, give you the illusion that I brushed it. Do prophecies influence Greece's policy in any way? I don't think so. I think the Greek government's pretty secular, to be honest. Even though Greece is one of the only Orthodox countries that officially says it's Orthodox. It's not like Orthodox is a religion, but it is the religion of Greece. So Greece is kind of like the Poland of the Orthodox world in that way. Oh, we have about 25 viewers, sad. I would like to get a few more, but, it's late. No, it's not. It's 8 o'clock. I don't know. Everyone's saying they're going to sleep. Like, wake up. It's only 8 o'clock here in the United States, which is like the only time zone that matters. So we here in the New World today. We're going to cover quite a few things today. People take EP too seriously. Bart. Well, we're going to cover that. We're going to cover the Ecumenical Patriarch, history of Greece, and so on. Gene, grow your hair. We need to critique the curl pattern. Why? Is it going to be like Black Twitter, where it's like, excuse me, I am a 1A.35 and I'm half B25 too. So what hair type do I have? Is it a coil or is it a curl? Yeah, I'm not going to do that stuff here. But you're free to stare at my face. Your Black Twitter is kind of crazy, man. And I do partake of it. All right, we got a few images I want to show you. We're going to start right now. This is just the Greek Orthodox Church. We're past 10 minutes, so now I think it's time. We're almost at 30 viewers. So welcome to the channel. We're now going to get into it, and we're going to explain everything. So over here, we have an image of a Greek church. Now, a lot of people who may not know anything about Orthodoxy think Orthodoxy is just a Greek religion. So they think it's just for Greeks and Greek-adjacent people, like Macedonians, even though they're arguing about the Slavic stuff is, whatever. Not going to get into that today. That'll be a different episode. But anyway, most people will say, oh, just Greece and surrounding areas are Orthodox. That's kind of it. So Greece, Cyprus, Greek diaspora, honestly, a lot of people in America have no idea what a map of Europe looks like, to be honest with you. That's not me mocking. I'm just telling the truth. A lot of people have no idea where Greece is and what Greek culture is. Some people, because of Percy Jackson and, Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon cartoons, think the Greeks still worship Zeus and Poseidon. So it's sad. Most people, when they think Greeks, they think feta cheese and Zeus and Heracles. That's what they think about. They don't think about, Eastern Rome and dudes with black beards and like monasticism, hesychasm. I love learning about hesychasm in 7th grade. No. They're learning about the Odyssey. They're learning about the Iliad, although it's the abridged Odyssey where he doesn't castrate all the guys at the end. Anyway, they're learning about Hellenic Greek, ancient Hellas. And so I do want to talk about that. On this channel, we talk way too much about Plotinus and Plato, Pythagoras, Parmenides, Aristotle, Ammonius Saccas, etc. And I'm actually, believe it or not, this is the Greek stream. I'm going to avoid talking about Plotinus and Aristotle because I'm trying to prove a point here that Greek Orthodoxy has nothing to do with that, just because it was part of the old Hellenistic world. But we will touch on it lightly. We're going to talk about Lord Byron, who's kind of the English version of a weeaboo, but for the Greeks. So I like the way you said Poseidon. I got it from a friend, a classmate of mine named Henry Duma. He used to pronounce it Poisson. Add Gene, we still have the Holy Trinity on our Constitution. Don't know for how long, though. As you said, the govs of the last 2 decades have been quite secular. Well, USAID funded liberalism in the Greek churches as well. So Ukraine, but also Greek. They funded LGBTQ stuff, certain gender movements, and so on. Tzatziki and Heroes as well. I don't know, guys. I know that you guys obviously have the claim on Tzatziki and Heroes, but honestly, I think a lot of Americans associate Heroes now with Turks as well. I'm sorry, you got to watch out. You got those Anatolians coming for you. Eastern Rome is greater than Hellenism. Bruh, Lord Byron sucks. Well, I'm glad you're here. I didn't know that. Now I know that he sucks. Anyway, so the church in Greece is kind of an interesting phenomenon. I'm going to show you really quick. Give me 1 second. I usually have all my images up here, but today I did not. So I am sorry. But I will be pulling it up. What? This is the wrong image. Hang on a second. Oh, it's the tiniest thing I've ever seen. What is that? Hold on. Stupid mouse. Yeah, you know what? That's good enough. I was trying to find one that I think you guys would like, but Google's rat's shit. So if we zoom in, these are the canonical territories, autocephalous, autonomous Eastern Orthodox churches. You've already been through this. I've showed this image multiple times before, so I'm just going to zoom in here to where it actually matters. So Anatolia is primarily of the what? Well, I know what it is, but some of you who didn't see. Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople. Okay? That's that. And then the Burgundies, the Church of Greece. So we have two here. We have the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, which is like Thessaloniki, northern Greece, Thrace, the Aegean. So actually all the Greek islands are actually part of Constantinople. They're Constantinopolitan churches. They're not part of the Church o' Greece. There is no Church o' Greece in that area. It's Constantinople. And then all of Anatolia, or not Anatolia, I mean Asia Minor. And so if you see here in Asia Minor, it looks, it's such a huge area that EP Bartholomew has so much power over. But remember, there's very few Orthodox Christians in Asia Minor and Western Armenia. In fact, the majority of them are going to be Syriacs who are part of the OO Church, so they don't really have jurisdiction over those. Then you can see that the southeast of Anatolia and all the way up to Western Armenia and Armenia proper is all part of Antioch, actually. So that's my tribe. So that's my tribe, baby. That's my tribe, baby. Got the hook-nosed Anatolians, guys. My tribe. No, but really, Anatolia, as you can see, is the Church of Antioch is the vast majority of what you can see here. So I think that's quite interesting. Now, what might be confusing to you guys, Azerbaijan and Armenia are showing as pink, as if they're part of Antioch. That's only talking about Eastern Orthodox. The Armenian Oriental Orthodox Church doesn't count here. We're talking about the EO only. Anyway, there is a distinction here. So the Burgundy that counts as the Church of Greece will be, about half or slightly more than half of the mainland of Greece. But as you can see, the rest of it belongs in the EP domain. So actually, when you have the Go Arch Church here in the United States, which I am going to discuss Go Arch as well. I was going to save it all for my United States Orthodoxy stream, but I thought, why don't we cover a little bit of that here, like the Greek diaspora. So, a lot of the Greek churches here are under the domain of the Church of Greece, or rather they're partnered with the Church of Greece, so they're not necessarily part of EP Constantinople. So if you go to Greek church here, old Bart is not going to corrupt you with Roman Catholicism. Speaking of, here's the man of the hour. This is Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew. All right, now I'm going to read a few comments here. Lord Byron was also a weeb for Armenian things. Good stuff. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have preserved them. Greek church architecture is awful, to be honest. So is Serb and Oriental overall. Really painful to look at, LOL. Well, I don't know if I agree with you on that. Before I knew about Orthodoxy, I thought Russia and Greece were Catholic and golden. Kebab is human meat. Kebab. I don't know anyone that associates heroes with turds. No, that's kebab. It's different. Well, that's the thing. This is why we have this language barrier. When Arabs and Greeks say kebab, we mean a cube of meat that is char-grilled on a skewer. When a Turk says kebab, it's a hero, right? Like, say it's something different. It's clearly a hero. And you guys clearly haven't been on college campuses that much because there's a lot of people who want Turkish heroes that I've run into. Jim, are you Rokor? I'm not. But I have nothing against Rokor. Never thought of heroes as anything but Greek. Don't forget Baklewa. All right. It's also the Greek government and the Greek people that the world thinks of Greeks as Zeus-worshipping folks. This is how they promote tourism. Why would care if they promoted Eastern Rome? I don't know. I think a lot of people would care, to be honest with you. Africa is so enormous compared to Europe. It's such a shame what's happening. With what? Is Africa growing? Guys, watch out. Algeria got bigger this year, growing into the Mediterranean. Greeks, even up to the liberation of modern Greece, called themselves Romeos, Roman, not Hellenes. Yeah, we're gonna cover that. Thank you, Jim Atreides, but we will cover that. It's basically Russian diaspora and Armenians who converted to EO, of which there are not very many. Anyway, so this here is Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew. He's the leader of, as you saw, the lion's share of Anatolia for the Greek Orthodox Church, and also about half of the land of Greece, the Aegean Islands, and Crete. So a lot of Greeks are actually not part of the Church of Greece. Now, does this make a huge difference? Probably not, because they happen to agree with each other and they align politically. A lot of people give Bartholomew flack for hanging out with Pope Francis and being more into dialogue with the Roman Catholics. But I do have to point out that Russia has increased its dialogue for the Eastern churches that are not Orthodox. So the Ethiopian Tawahedo, Eritrean Tawahedo, Coptic Church, plus diaspora in Sudan, obviously. Syriac Orthodox Church, Malankara Church, Armenian Church. And so if the Russians are playing ball with the Eastern heterodox, then I don't see why it's more evil for Bartholomew to play ball with the Western heterodox. I don't think Bartholomew's actually going to say, we Catholics now. I think he's just trying to promote unity, but they'll just agree like, hey, Orthodoxy will just be for people in Eastern Europe and stuff, and Catholic will be for everybody else. However, we're not going to disagree and fight over theology. We have our ways, you have yours. So basically, it'll be like they're Eastern Catholics, but they're not in communion. They're not going to recognize the Pope, but they'll just be nice to the Pope. Whereas if you look at the Greek historicists who I mentioned in a previous stream, they considered the seat of the papacy to be the Antichrist. So in the Apocalypse and in 2 Thessalonians, it says that the Antichrist will sit in God's temple and call himself God on earth. And so the Greek historicists said, well, that's the Pope. He's the only one who claims to be the representation of God on earth. Anyway, so Bartholomew resides in Constantinople to this day, although he bops around in Greece and other places all the time. I will say some nice things about him since everybody's just ragging on him all the time. On social media. He does seem to care quite a bit about the environment. I don't just mean like sleazy remarks like, hey, we got to cut carbon emissions, so that means you have to elect a Democrat. But I mean real environmental stuff, like he has cared about wildlife and nature, ecosystem. So you all know that that's something I care about. So I would be happy that Bart is doing that. I'm using the Bart stuff just as a joke because people call Pope Francis Frank. I call him Frank. Before Rome, what did they call each other? Was it just by the city they were from? Well, people were very local. So you were an Athenian, you were a Spartan, etc. Also, they stopped caring about Olympus and stuff once the philosophers came. So where you came from didn't matter as much anymore, unless you're from Athens. That was like going to Harvard back then. You just kind of brag about that. But being Greek, this is why I want to talk about this Hellenic thing, because it doesn't make sense the more you look at it. So we're going to get into that. So here's a picture of the Republic of Greece. As you can see, it actually includes some elements in Asia Minor. So this was the dream, to have a pocket of the northwest coast of what is now Turkey, be part of the Greek Orthodox Church. Now, I'm just showing this here for the sake of talking about it. Now, I did want to talk about this stuff real quick. This Hellenic thing with Mr. Byron is nonsensical jibber-jabber. So as we had a comment from Jim Atreides say, you have the Romeo or Romoid identity, which is just Roman. Eastern Roman, though, okay? Let's be serious. Like, you can call Eastern Rome Rome, but it is distinct from Western Rome, right? They're not the same as the Italic peoples and the Latins, etc. They're not the same. But they inherited that spirit of that empire of the Mediterranean for sure. And so they called themselves Romans, which was very well suiting. And Hellenic just meant, no, I'm not a Roman. I'm like an ethnic Greek, and I care about Aristotle, Plato, Odysseus. I don't care about, like, literally for them, basically history was the Odysseus, the Odyssey, and Homer is born. Olympian Greek theology is awesome for some reason. Then the Platonists show up, and suddenly Olympian theology is rat's shit. Then there's a blackout period, like in Protestantism, and then the Turks come, and then we're in the modern day, and Greece is back, baby, and we're lighting the Olympic Games. Like, if you ask a Hellen, like, what is your concept of history? It's literally going to be Zeus and Odysseus, Plato, black period of Turkish dominion, modern day. Like, just skipping over everything Byzantine. And that's what most Americans think of Greece too. They're thinking Aristotle, and then that's it. It's just Aristotle. Like, the whole of Greece is just two dudes. It's Homer and Aristotle. That's it. Nobody else has ever been born. And if you take math, you're going to hear Pythagoras. But anyway, so that's clearly not the case historically. And the Hellenic identity was resurrected by a man called Lord Byron, who himself died in Greece. He was a Hellenophile, so kind of the equivalent of weeaboo for Greece. He was quoting all these poets and stuff, and talking about Aristotle and talking about Plato. And the Greeks who were fighting the Turks at the time didn't know anything about that, and they really didn't care. So the Greeks who were fighting the Turks were not Platonists. They didn't read philosophy. They didn't care about philosophy. They didn't care about metaphysics. They were just nominal Christians who believed in God. They prayed to Theotokos, pray to the Trinity, and then they would go kill some Turks, and that was basically their life. Like they're pretty, I don't want to say simple, but they were just living a biblical life. They weren't so concerned with mental abstraction. But then when the Englishmen who would show up and French and other people who fantasized about Greece, they thought that they're going to be walking into paradise. Like I remember in Byron's memoirs, he was expecting to roll into Greece and find these like white buildings and people sitting in togas, like laying like this, like thinking about the universe. And when he got there, it's just a bunch of like brown dudes with mustaches shooting at other brown dudes. He was very disappointed, and so he tried to resurrect that. And he did in part resurrect the Hellenic identity. And so he was telling them, guys, you're not Romans. Forget that Roman. Being Roman is rat's shit now. You know what's cooler? Aristotle and Odysseus. And so now, of course, anywhere in the world you go, you're going to find Greek diaspora. It's really prominent here in America, too. People, you can't say this is like a very recent thing from 30 years ago. All the diaspora who came here over 100 years ago are the same, too. They come here, they make restaurants. There's one that I used to go to all the time called Athena, after the goddess Athena. It's got all this like sculptures of Greek heads and, of Athena and like Zeus and Poseidon and stuff. And, the like Greek squibbly stuff that they put around all their menus and whatever. And it's just blue and white, and like that's kind of it. And you're not going to see a cross in the restaurant most of the time unless it's in the office. It's not going to be an icon. Not saying you should go to a restaurant and eat steak by an icon. But I'm just saying that the identity is clearly very focused on this whole, hey, look, we're like these super cool Mediterraneans, and we got this Greek god stuff going on. In fact, I would even go as far to say that the modern Hellenic identity is kind of like more North African than it is European. I know some people are going to freak out. Oh, Jim, how dare you, stupid bastard. It's not North African at all. But hear me out. The aesthetics of modern Greece, like if we go back to this, okay? Right? If we go back to this aesthetic, this has nothing to do with Europe. It's Christian, 100% Christian, but it's nothing to do with Europe. This is not European architecture. European architecture is heavily influenced by either Latins, so italics, and other Latins like Spaniards, or by people of Germanic and Gothic origin. That's kind of it. Those are the two main influences. And you can see that replete even in the Balkans. But in Greece, it's different than the rest of the Balkans. You don't have that influence there, or rather, you don't have it recently. So a lot of Greek identity is like they're European, but they're also way different from the rest of Europe. And so I definitely think that that's been a massive change that you guys need to investigate. But anyway, there's a famous story of when, the Hellenists were freeing and liberating all these islands from the Turks. They would come and see these people who call themselves Hellenes, and they were curious, like the locals were curious to see what are these Hellenes all about, what do they look like? And the people liberating the islands were shocked because the people that they were freeing identified as Romans. They didn't identify as a Hellene. During the Greek Revolution, there was a big split between the Greeks that continued the historical ancient Byzantine throughout the church, and the Greeks got influence from the Renaissance. Yeah, so I would definitely say that identifying as a Homeric Greek is ironically a Western import, because even though, yes, it is Greek and it's part of Greek heritage, and there is a level of pride that should be attached to that, saying, hey, Eastern Rome is garbage, I'm just going to be a Hellene now, that's a Western idea to disenfranchise the Orthodox ideology. By Western, I just mean like French, British Empire, German as well. That was their, and Catholic, of course, idea to move the Greeks away from that identity, to fragment the Orthodox world. Right? Most of the Orthodox world got swallowed up in communism. You have all these weird ethnic fights in the Balkans over borders being drawn there, just like the Middle East. Then you have the Greeks who say, are trying to be more and more Western day by day, and their identity had changed. Their identity had changed. So what's wrong exactly? I was agreeing with what you were saying. That it's a Renaissance idea. The architecture of Greek churches is Roman. It's based on basilica, Roman government building with dome. I agree with you. It is. I'm talking about the churches here. I'm not talking about just the churches. I'm talking primarily about just building designs and how they market themselves demographically. Now, there are some churches that take the whole white and blue thing and just try to make a Greek islands aesthetic. But I will definitely agree with you that the whole dome idea is not a Turkish thing. The Turks took that from the Greeks. But anyway, let's go to the next picture. Now, this is Mount Athos, obviously. You can see the difference night and day. When you go to Mount Athos, they still believe in Byzantine time. Okay, they still believe in this Eastern Roman identity. So, Zach, quick question. Is this stream about the Greek church in its current state under Bartholomew? Yeah, it is. We're talking about differences in culture. I just covered the ethnic cultural part. Now we're talking more about going back to the theological part. So Mount Athos, you see kind of like almost like what you kind of saw in the early Christian period, where a lot of people were becoming nominally Christian and not taking it so seriously. But the monasteries is where that more fanatic Christianity stayed alive. So that first started in Egypt and places in North Africa like modern Algeria, moved to Rome and Western Europe as well, where people were tired of these kind of lazy Christians who didn't have to try very hard, so they retreated to the monasteries. So the monasteries is really where the real, like, unadulterated theology is coming from. So when someone in a monastery is writing theology, he's writing it based on books that he's reading and trying to continue that lineage up until this day. Whereas you have people that sometimes talk about theology, and this is not to denounce priests as general, but in a state like Greece is becoming heavily more secularized, and amongst Greek diaspora here in America, the way they speak is very indicative of the times. I don't know how many times I've listened to a Greek priest talk about misogyny and homophobia and stuff. It's like, this is not important. It has nothing to do with Orthodoxy whatsoever. You're just talking about stuff that Americans care about talking about. But while we're in God's temple, we should not be worrying about homophobia and misogyny. And by the way, the church already has stances on that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and play the part of the feminist. So that's definitely what I want to talk about. Joey, I'm not Greek. I don't know why you're acting about this Fed stuff. Well, I don't have to mention it. You just mentioned it there, John. So thank you very much for bringing that up. First university, and also some of the first hospitals as well. Throughout the Byzantine times, ethnically Greeks knew they're Greeks and not Latins. Yeah, I know. You guys knew you weren't Latins, Franks, or Armenians. But to be Greek was to be Eastern Roman. Not saying you identified as Latin Romans. It was still a Greek thing. Maybe it would be more accurate to say Greco-Roman. But anyway, that was how it was. So we already talked about Bartholomew. We talked about kind of the differences here. Now, the Hellenic identity thing, like the Renaissance idea, doesn't really make much sense. Okay? Yeah, that's the thing. It's a complicated word salad here. Okay? Because yes, they called themselves Romans, but they knew they were Greeks. But being Greek did not mean LARPing about Homer. It meant, hey, that was the stuff in the past. Now we're Eastern Romans. It was a Greco-Roman identity. I mean, I am. My family is. I'm not saying I'm Greek. I'm just talking about it. Anyway, one point I want to mention quickly is that a lot of what Patriarch Bartholomew is doing is directly influenced by the foundation money he's receiving from NGOs like USAID, I assume you were going to mean. But the Hellenic thing doesn't make much sense to me, because if you look at some of the Hellenic philosophers, a lot of them weren't from Greece. They were not Greek islanders or Greek Europeans, right? The most famous of all, other than Aristotle and Plato, is Plotinus and Ammonius Saccas. They were North Africans. They're from Egypt. He's ethnically Egyptian. He's like maybe mixed race, like Grecianized Egyptian. He was born in Egypt. He was not a pure Greek. Zeno, another philosopher, was Lebanese. Okay, so like being Hellenic was an identity. It wasn't a racial thing. But now when you look at this post-Renaissance idea of what a Greek means, the Hellenic thing is attributed to being a racial thing. I've seen many people on Twitter and YouTube and other places where you have actual Greeks who are either from Greece directly or currently living there. And they'll say, yeah, the Rum in Syria, the Arab Orthodox, they're Greek Orthodox, but they're not Greeks. So it goes to show you that the Hellenic thing is an ethnic thing too. It's not just cultural. But in the past, being Hellenic meant that you were also an Egyptian or a Lebanese or something like that. Nobody thought that everybody was the same blood. But anybody could be part of Greek culture as long as you walked the walk and did the philosophy. It's this idea that, yeah, exactly. This idea that, oh, I'm not a Roman, I'm actually a pure Hellene. Well, the pure Hellene thing was destroyed during the time of the philosophers. So it's not really a historical idea. People have to realize that Greeks had dealings with the Middle East since ancient times. Alexander the Great went to the East. So Greeks naturally are more Middle Eastern than European. That is the truth. Yeah, I mean, even if someone tries to say, well, Greeks speak an Indo-European language, recent studies have shown that Greek and Armenian are very distinct and they're not similar to the rest of the European languages. Number one, so Greece is very unique. And number two, speaking the language is not really a DNA thing. Like just because somebody says, "Oh, I speak this and that," doesn't mean that they're geographically or genetically different than people not that far away from them. Like Turks speak an Asian language, but most of them are not pure Mongolians or anything like that. I think we covered a lot, but anyway, when we look at theology, there's a few more things we have to bring up, and I want to do a whole stream about this man, but I think we do have to. I think we do have to bring him up now. Because this is Father John Romanides, probably the most famous contemporary Greek theologian to dwell in our firmament. And Romanides is a very controversial figure. He's regarded as being anti-Augustinian. I suppose he literally is anti-Augustinian because, he rails on Augustine nonstop. But I don't think he's necessarily against original sin. So if any of you have read that paper by Vladimir Moss, I think maybe it goes a little bit far. I don't think Romanides ever says there is no sin that is inherited. Now, he does say it's more of a product of the environment, but what is that environment? That's human culture and human society. So if you read Romanides in conjunction with the Church Fathers, you won't see a massive, massive problem because you would just say, well, a child is born corrupted by their environment, but that environment is human civilization. So you are saying human civilization is at its heart corrupted by sin. You're just not saying it's a pseudo-sexual phenomenon. So for those of you who don't know, Augustine thought, and cover your ears if you have children nearby, or cover their ears, that when a man ejaculated into a woman, his semen actually carried a sin. I'm not joking around. You can read St. Augustine for yourself. He thinks that the seed of man contributes to the creation of the soul, and so man's sperm actually crafts the soul, and then from that comes the sin. So anybody who just showed up, we are talking about semen. So welcome. Thank you, Jim Bob, for the raid. Awfully bad time to show up, I have to say. There's a 17-second delay, so I didn't know you guys were here, and now it's too late. Now I'm talking about nutting and a North African theologian called St. Augustine. But if you are aware of who that is, you know who that is. ALC, thank you very much. Jim Bob, again, awesome shout out. Thank you very much. Check out Jim Bob's channel if you are here and you've never heard or seen of him before. If you are from the Jim Bob invasion, please like the video, because I do a lot of videos that people don't like. It's like I can tell nobody cared. But yeah, that's what happens sometimes. It's called a raid. So I get a lot of people in here. So anyway, what I was telling you all was that if you actually read Augustine, he does believe. Yeah, that's true. I don't believe it, but he does believe that the semen of man is what gives that sin. It's inherited via the man's bodily fluid. And so Romanides goes against that quite a bit. Now, to be fair to Augustine, I think Romanides goes way too far against the sin stuff. He thinks everything in all of humanity is just Franks are evil and that's it. So Father John Romanides had this big complex that, the pagan Franks, the Celts and the Germanics who came in and destroyed the Roman Empire. They destroyed Christianity because they had all these wacko ideas that weren't part of the therapeutic religion of Orthodox Christianity. That was his big theory. Now, it's true in some cases, but like everybody who holds to an all-powerful conspiracy theory, it turns into the single cause fallacy. And that's where you end up with these ideas that they don't always make sense. So you can't just say the Jesuits rule everything. The Jesuits made my cheeseburger. They didn't make your fucking cheeseburger. Sorry for the crass language. I just get a little mad with the single cause fallacy stuff. And so Father John Romanides, he did that, but with the Franks. So hot dogs, well, that's a Frank. Oh, that means the Germans made it. But, true as that is, you can't do single cause fallacy for everything. So he does go too hard on Augustine. He thinks Augustine created bad theology, and then the Franks picked it up, and they just ruined all of Christianity. Now, one thing that he's correct about, the Franks did pick up Augustine's theology. The Franks did overemphasize Augustine, Ambrose, or the pseudo-Ambrose, Ambrosiaster. So Augustine, Ambrose, Anselm, Aquinas. Quadruple A. Augustine, Ambrose, Anselm, Aquinas. It's just all these A theologians. Those are the only people that are of import. And really, you could get rid of Anselm and Ambrose and just have Augustine and Aquinas, and that would be a lot of Latin theology for you. So now you guys understand where that comes from. So if you don't know Aquinas and stuff, living under a rock, obviously, but he's the most magnificent theologian of the Catholic Church. He influenced all of Western society. So if you love Western society, you can thank Aquinas. If you think Western society is going down the tubes, you can blame Aquinas. He had a massive amount of influence. So this priest here, this Greek priest, Father John Romanides, and he had many, many problems against Augustine. Now, I myself used to be in love with Augustinian theology, and I used to always talk about that stuff on this channel. And if you see some of my early streams from like a year or two ago, I do quite heavy-handed Augustinian theology apologetics, but I've toned that down recently because I've realized that there are some real problems with it. If any of you guys on here are white boys, you'll know that white guilt comes from the highly fine-tuned, inherited, or imputed guilt language of Augustinian tradition. So the Greek Orthodox Church, and all Orthodox. If some of you guys are Jim Bob, I know you know what Orthodoxy is, but if some of you don't, I don't know. Maybe some of the guys who watch the channel are secular or something. Orthodox Christianity is not just for Greeks and Russians, although those are the more prominent ethnicities that follow it. And so in Orthodox theology, we're not as strictly Augustinian as Catholic and Protestant. So we have a way different approach. Now, Father John Romanides, he talked smack on metaphysics quite a lot. Okay, so he didn't like the speculations of the Latin Church. So I'm going to put in the call button, and you guys can call into the show. Anybody can call in. If you think I'm wrong and like a plutard, you can call me a plutard, and that'll be it. Now, remember, you have to be part of Mozilla Firefox or Google Chrome in order to access this stream. Oh,
hello.
Two crooks. Wait a minute. Who are you? You've never been on here before.
Yeah, I actually need to step out soon, so I need to make my statement before I leave. I do think it is very interesting that ancient Greece is what people commonly think of in regards to Greece. And as I mentioned in my comments, I think that is largely because the Enlightenment worshipped this pre-Christian Greece as its ideal. So implicitly, it is more economically viable for Greece to do tourism in regards to the more ancient stuff, because they know the Thompsons from Iowa or something don't exactly care about Greek Orthodox heritage when they come over for like a Greek cruise or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree fully with you. There is a reason they're doing it, and they're not like stupid to do it. They're quite smart. But the problem I have is it's not just like, touristic stuff. It also bleeds into their own beliefs about who they are. Do you agree?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because when you sell this idea of what Greece is to tourism, it is going to bleed back into the people themselves. And then you might have these 18-year-old Greeks going on social media being, we were so cool with Socrates worshiping Zeus and all that. Why are we Christian now? And they're really just regurgitating a lot of non-Greek ideas about Greece, about what it means to be Hellenic and all that. And it is pretty funny, though, because we can relate to that a bit in the Middle East. Lebanon is primarily known for being this Christian island in the Middle East, for instance. Nobody cares about the goddess Beirutis, which, yes, is what our city is named after. But at the same time, you go to Iraq or something, or Egypt, people don't care about Muslimin or Coptic Egypt. They care about the pyramids. When they think about Iraq, in between wanting to bomb it to submission, they think about, Sargon of Akkad and all that. They don't care about
Sargon of Akkad. Yeah, you know that like that right wing guy.
Yeah,
Sargon
oh my God.
of Akkad, like 2014 or whatever.
That was such a wild time. I couldn't escape him in the YouTube recommendations, and I don't know. I think
I was fat during that time, man. I was really overweight. That's all I remember. The rest of it was a blur of like fast food and 4chan.
Yeah, but don't worry. Don't worry. Just eat the tabbouleh and exercise, and you will be healthy.
It was just cheeseburgers and like nonsense. But yeah, anyway, as you were saying, please continue your point.
Yes, so it is pretty funny because a lot of what identity is in a country can also be influenced about how outsiders think of that country. Again, Armenia, for instance, is widely known to be this first Christian country, not to be confused with the first converts to Christianity, of course. Geographically, it would obviously be the Palestinian Judeans, Israelites. So in a way, that also means Armenians kind of feel this need to stay Christian. And the thing with Iraq, though, what makes it interesting, and Egypt as well, is that because paganism, Egyptian paganism, Sumerian paganism, Assyrian paganism is such a massive departure from what they are as these Christian Muslim peoples, they're not going to be in the mood for all this ancestor cry thing. In fact, they poke fun at how the current worshippers of Egyptian and Sumerian pagan gods are mostly just white people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I definitely agree with you. I do think that you're correct that the Renaissance is to blame. We talked about Lord Byron. So for any of you guys who are new here, let me get an image of the Renaissance up. I just want to explain it real quick. So basically, the Renaissance was that, these Englishmen and French went to Greece while they were fighting against the Ottoman Empire in the 1800s. And they revived this belief that the Greeks were not Romans, not Eastern Romans, not Byzantine Christians, but that they were the inheritors of Homer and Aristotle. And so they revived this identity. And in the decades that followed, most Greeks would eventually succumb to that identity, to the point where today, like we talked about, even Greeks themselves associate their identity with like Zeus and Poseidon. Maybe not like in a serious way, in kind of a half-joking way, but it's a very, very popular endeavor. So I do want to let on the next person, Alex Kopnick. So thank you, Two Crooks. You can stay if you want, though.
I'm going to head out. But
yep. How's it going, Alex?
Hey, Gene. Or Jed. I had a quick question. So I'm broke right now, right? And I'm trying to read the church fathers, all the church fathers from like up to Nicaea. And I was wondering if there's like a cheap way to get access to them, like without having to buy, books. I have a couple books here that were edited by Ehrman, that are from Loeb Classical Library. But
okay. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you want their complete corpus, it is a little expensive. You can read them online on like churchfathers.com or New Advent or something, but I don't like reading online. If I had to find a book for you that would sum up just like the basics of their theology, where each theologian might just get a page to himself, you can check out J.N.D. Kelly's book, Early Christian Doctrine, where it's all about the councils and all the theology that led up to it. So it's not so much the ante-Nicenes, but more he focuses on the first like 4 ecumenical councils and stuff. And so if you want to read about it, Athanasius, St. Cyril, Ambrose, Augustine, all this stuff, that'll be found in a book like that. So I would look for like history books and theology books about that time period, because it'll fit all the theologians in without you having to like spend $20 per person. I got to buy a book on Athanasius and a book on St. Cyril. If you read a book like his, though, you're going to get most of it condensed into one book. That would be my suggestion for now.
Okay. And then I also wanted to ask, is there like any specific book or anything, any like resources that kind of goes over, the theology, like the differences between metaphysicism and diophysitism, just the corpus of where we disagree as Orientals and Eastern.
Yeah, I can't recommend a book per se, because I myself really have not touched that topic too much, but I'm beginning to read into it. Like I said, to take my own advice, I was just reading history books about the Eastern churches, and they would condense this stuff, but I'm going to have to bite the bullet and like read a book where it's all about that topic, because it is complex, and if the arguments were stupid and a baby could see through it, then nobody would believe in either side. Like there would just be clearly one side that's the winner. But obviously there are theologians on either side that are intelligent enough to defend the case, so we do have to examine those. I do want to read the super chat out. Give me 1 second. Jim Atreides, 1399 CAD, thank you very much for the donation. He says, recent genetic studies have proven that 75% of modern Greek population are descendants of the Mycenaean Greeks from 4,000 years ago. So they're not as diluted as people think. Yeah, I agree with you, Jim. I don't know why people think Greeks are like these mutt mixes of, you're like a quarter Arab, a quarter European, a quarter Turk. You're clearly not. You are just Greek. But the reason they say that is because like people from the Levant and Egypt, Greeks can come in a lot of different colors. So they might think you're really mixed, but in reality, you just have the ability to take different phenotypes. Like Lebanese can be really pale, some are really dark. It just depends on who their parents are and what the luck of the genetics is. But thanks for the questions, Alex. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, actually, there's one last thing. I have both your books off Amazon.
Cool.
And I've read some small portions so far. I just had a quick question. It was about the reliability of the New Testament. Obviously, I know you went over Matthew, and obviously the church fathers talking about originally Matthew was in Hebrew.
When they say Hebrew, by the way, I should have written a little disclaimer in the book. That also means like Palestinian Aramaic. It doesn't just mean Hebrew. It just means whatever Semitic language people were speaking at that time. That's what Matthew was probably drafted in originally.
Yep. I know you had mentioned Ehrman, I think, once in the book. In the obviously the second edition. But I think, damn, I'm trying to remember.
I probably didn't answer a lot. I mean, that's a pretty short chapter. I could write a whole book on textual criticism. I just didn't want to because I find it's kind of a dry subject.
I was just wondering if you could go more into detail about textual criticism, maybe in the future. I've looked at other scholars and what they say. Obviously, I've looked at Daniel B. Wallace, F.F. Bruce, Edward J. Young, all the scholars you can think of that defend textual criticism. But obviously, I like to hear, everybody's ideas.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll probably cover more of that in the future. So if you're unaware, anyone who's new here, I have a book. You can check it out on Amazon. But yeah, I do put one chapter in textual critique, but I didn't go that too far into it. But thanks very much for the questions, Alex. And if you have any more, please let me know. I'm just going to let Zach on real quick. Zach, how's it going?
Yo, what's up, Jim? How are you?
I'm doing good. What would you like to talk about today?
So I just kind of wanted to elaborate on what you were saying earlier about the modern day sort of state of Greece. I'm not that educated, so this is mainly just going off what I've seen in the news and different stories, yeah. But I think that a lot of the sort of culture in Greece right now is heavily influenced with what's going on in the West, specifically like with what's going on over here with liberalism and sort of socialism. And I know not too long ago there was a sort of a push for gay marriage, and that ended up being successful. So I'd imagine that a lot of what's going on right now is heavily affecting the church over there and sort of heavily affecting the politics and things like that. Obviously, I think the church anathematized a lot of the governors and things that were for the vote, but I think that that might have just been a drop in the sea. I think that it's probably going to get a lot worse depending on how far our culture sort of devolves even more.
Well, that's the thing I wanted to add. Yeah, that's the thing. That's how you can tell that Greece has been kind of oriented a little westward. The whole Renaissance idea moved them to be more kind of in common with Italy and even not really France, but just Western culture overall. So they take a lot of their cues from the West, and it's kind of weird because like a lot of Greeks are very proud to be Eastern, but at the same time, the modern culture takes a lot from the West. So that's why I was saying that the real theology is coming out of the monasteries and stuff.
Yeah, I'd also want to mention as well that I think that a lot of what Greece is known for over here in the West, and I'm from the UK, by the way, but a lot of what we sort of knew Greece from was its paganism. Now, there's a lot to say about the early paganism of Greece, so their belief in Zeus. In fact, it wasn't too dissimilar to modern-day Islam, actually, if you think about it, with how they would kill and persecute us Christians or anyone that basically went against it. So there's nothing new there, but I think that it fascinates a lot of people over in the West because, it's designed to sort of play into carnal sort of desires, and because our society's become a lot more sort of culturally secular, I think that it's embraced that sort of part of Greece, and I think that Greece, as I think someone was talking about it earlier, has sort of embraced that as well more because of the money that they could make from tourists and things like that.
Yeah, and if you're secular, it's a lot easier to appreciate someone's paganism from 3,000 years ago because nobody's really practicing it, but you can kind of LARP. And each country's different, so none of them are real. Like, you don't really have to worry about a real Zeus. When you're dealing with Christianity or even Islam, you're dealing with people who actually believe in that God, and it's a physical thing, and a physical religion that actually exists. It's not just something that you study. And what makes Father John Romanides interesting is that people didn't seem to learn the full lesson of what he was teaching. So even though people claim like, oh, Father John Romanides corrupted the whole Orthodox Church with his anti-Augustinian stuff, but if they actually listened to what he was saying about Augustine in the West, then Greeks wouldn't idolize the West because they would see the issues of Western philosophy. So I think that a lot of what he has to say, even though he's not perfect, his attacks on Western philosophy, I think are pretty good, to be honest. So that would be my short defense of Father John, who's the guy imaged here, most controversial theologian in the last 50 years, probably.
When you talk about Western theology, are you referring to Thomas Aquinas and his belief in natural theology?
I'm referring to the entire system of basing speculative metaphysical theology on Hellenism. So Aristotle and Plato in particular, believe it or not, even though they're Greeks, are a lot more emphasized in the Western churches than they are in the East. So the Byzantine Empire exiled people that actually claimed to be Platonists or humanists. They didn't tolerate that. And so between the Turks and then later communism, there really wasn't time for the Orthodox Church to do their own Renaissance.
On the subject of communism, the whole thing that you're talking about right now sort of reminds me of what happened in Russia. Because as you know, communism was a Western ideology. It was made by a lot of influential people. And it got sort of imported into Russia. And as a result, that kind of just created like this downward spiral where a lot of people decided that they liked the idea because, the Tsar's bad or whatever. And it eventually led into the Russian Revolution. And now you sort of have what's going on now. I know it's a little bit off topic, but it just sort of reminded me of that.
That's fine. It also started with the Enlightenment. It was a little before communism. Peter the Great, he loved Protestantism and he liked the secular Scandinavian countries a lot, and he liked the Enlightenment. He really didn't. He thought Orthodoxy was a backward religion, and that Russians were like moronic, illiterate, stupid people with a superstition. So he definitely, around the northwest parts of Russia are the most atheist parts today. That's where a lot of his Enlightenment influence was before communism, even, but especially during communism too.
I think a lot of things stem from the Enlightenment, like a lot of the sexual revolution stuff. A lot of the atheism, as you were talking about, all came from then. Because it gets to a point where I think it's you think that, oh, God doesn't exist anymore, we can do whatever we want. So the end conclusion of it, I think, is what Nietzsche was talking about with nihilism, practically. So people just think they can go and do whatever they want. There are no boundaries anymore. We go and say what we want. We can be whatever we want. I think
it's a weird mix of two things, because you see Westerners will act like that on the surface, but then deep within, they're still religious. Like they'll attach themselves to social justice ideas. So that part, the individual stuff, comes from Aristotle, saying, I don't need to listen to anybody. That's an Aristotelian Enlightenment idea. But then the Platonic aspect comes in with the religion, like forcing people to accept your version of objective morality, which is subjective, obviously. But anyway, their version of morality, and saying, we as a society have to get rid of right-wing people or whatever. That is a Platonic idea, and even communism comes from that too. But yeah, I do agree with the sentiment of what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you. One last thing. Do you have any, because obviously I'm still learning right now. I don't really know that much. I only know a little bit. Are there any books you would recommend on these different subjects and things? Because I do want to expand my knowledge, and I do want to learn a lot more about sort of philosophy and all of these things.
Yeah, my book. Other than
wow, dude, you got that shameless plug right there.
Or why not? No. Other than my book, I would read The Cave in the Light by Arthur Herman, and I would read Early Christian Doctrine by J.N.D. Kelly. Those two books are foundational. They're for anybody who's a, quote, beginner like yourself. Learn the basics of the theology and the basics of where the philosophy comes from. And keep in mind, the authors aren't perfect. Sometimes I think they make mistakes. But overall, it's a good way to look at the historical ideas. So check those two out. And then I have a whole playlist of a million things I've covered before.
All right. Thank you, brother. God bless.
Yeah, you too. God bless. Thanks for calling in, Zach. Alexandros, you're up. How's it going? Alexandros, you there? I can't hear you, man. Oh, your audio is not working. You need to call back on Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox. Other websites don't work on this. Johnny's Rex, what's up?
Hello, Jim. So I thought what you said about Greek culture today was very wise. I kind of see parallels of that in my culture, like the differences between like the kind of frontier foundations of it, kind of juxtaposed with the kind of Enlightenment values of like democratic politics.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Please.
Yeah, but then I also I just had a question for you, like coming from a Lebanese background. The Phoenicianism is a kind of similar to that, like going back to the ancient roots and kind of rejecting different aspects of like the historical culture and ignoring it. Well, not necessarily ignoring it, but do you know people that subscribe to like Phoenicianist beliefs? Like, do you consider yourself to be an Arab or like more Phoenician as a Lebanese? And what is like your family and your community think about that?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I want to quote from you a quote from Amin al-Rihani. I'm trying to find it. Hang on a minute. This is going to be good. You'll like it. This will answer the question. Give me 1 second. This is a good quote. I do want to find this, but yeah, I don't know. I'll just paraphrase it. One thing I do want to read out a comment real quick. So Imperator O. Forge says Nietzsche was not influenced by the Enlightenment, but by Hegel, who is counter-enlightened. Yeah, that's true. But, I always conflate and collapse Renaissance and Enlightenment into the same sphere. Even though they're opposed to each other, they're cut from the same cloth. They're both a reduction of Hellenistic dialectic of philosophy, particularly the Platonic part, but the Enlightenment's not really much better. Anyway, so as for me, and as for the Lebanese identity and why that's similar to the Greek thing that's going on with the Hellenics, yeah, it is similar. I think it was Amin al-Rihani or Feris Shidiak who said that modern people, as in Westerners from France and the UK, were coming into the Middle East, and they were trying to, dissect everybody so they wouldn't have the same kind of Arab/Muslim identity. So the Egyptians, you should care about the pharaohs, and then the Lebanese should be Phoenicians, and the North Africans should be Berbers, and then that way, there isn't really an Arab identity anymore. So I think the Phoenician thing, honestly, is actually not that popular amongst normal people. Most normal people probably are just kind of like proud of them, but they don't actually identify as a Phoenician today. Kind of like how Egyptians will say they're not fully Arab, they're Egyptian, but then they don't make a different identity out of it. They're still very proud to be Muslims and Arabs. And so Amin al-Rihani, who made that quote himself, was a Christian, and he was in favor of there being an Arab identity. I think that the Arab identity just needs to act kind of like the way that like a Latino identity acts. So Latino doesn't really mean anything. I mean, it means something, but there's so much diversity there that it can apply to like a black person from Brazil, or can apply to George Lopez, and have totally different cultures and stuff, but they're bound by that kind of similarity of worlds. So that's
or a Romanian guy in Wallachia.
Yeah. So like that's So like a Lebanese, what constitutes Lebanese Arab culture is probably different than what constitutes Moroccan Arab culture, but there is some kind of a shared world domain that they belong to. And so I would definitely say that that's probably how it should operate. It's not a pure ethnic identity.
All right. Well, that's all I had. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much, Johnny's Rex. I have another comment. Jim Atreides. The Lebanese look a lot like Greeks. Jim, you could very well pass as a Greek. Greeks and Phoenicians, a lot of dealings. Yeah. So we do have Phoenician ancestors. That's 100% true. But I don't like when people who don't know any Phoenician, obviously, try to like do a LARP reconstruction thing, because then you'd have to be a pagan. Whereas the Greek identity kind of molded into the Roman identity and changed over time. But yeah, like in terms of like ethnicity, Arab's not really a racial thing. Most people who say they're Arabs aren't literally from a tribe in Arabia. It's more of a cultural idea at this point. So that's why, a lot of people who are Arabs look a lot like Greeks. We've got Alexandros is back, this time with a working audio.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. It's my first time calling. Good morning from Athens.
Good morning. How are you doing?
It's okay. Yes, about this Greek identity, even modern Greeks, my friends, and most of the average Greek doesn't exactly know the historical line of their ancestry, because this is during the revolution that actually changed a lot. Most of Greeks back then in 1800s, the average Greek knew who he was, but some Greeks that were educated in France and were very influenced by the Renaissance.
Yeah.
They had very bad how to say opinion about the Byzantines. So they pushed this idea that actual Greeks got first subjugated by the Macedonians, the Greek democracy and Greek culture by Macedonians, and after that, their first time to be independent was in the 1800s from the Turks. So they were subjugated by Macedonians, Romans, Byzantines, Turks, and now it was their first time coming back to the light. And because all these centuries they were in the dark, they had to take this light from where? From the Western Europeans that copied the ancient Greeks, kinda. That was their idea, but it's very flawed, very unhistorical.
I agree. I have an image here of the Greek Revolution, and the man with the clean-shaven man there is Lord Byron. The
yes.
Englishman, yeah. So we mentioned him a few times before. What do you think of the fact that a lot of Americans and other Westerners, when they think of Greece, they think of Zeus and Achilles and Hercules. They don't really think about the Orthodox Church or anything.
It's kind of funny. It's funny, but no, I don't feel bad about it. It's not like the average Christian hates these, gods because they are the gods of our ancestors. So they were just wrong,
Yeah, it's simple.
It's nothing. Pre-Christian Greeks, they didn't know about Jesus. I mean, they tried their best to understand the world.
Yeah.
And the fact
That's why
that
we
they
have the Gospels, they go to Greece in the Epistle of St. Paul, and in the Book of Acts he goes to Greece and he talks with them and he says there's some similarity between us, but here's the real God, the real religion, and your philosophy led you closer to us. And so
yes,
we meet
actually modern Greeks can gain a lot of pride, not only from Plato and Aristotle, but also from the Cappadocians and all the other Greek-speaking and nationally Greek that contributed in the Christianity we know today, in the how we see Christianity today.
Definitely. One last question for you. What do you think of Father John here? A very controversial figure, very famous. What do you think of him personally?
I actually didn't read a lot of theology. I like more history to read, but there are a lot. From what I heard from you about him, I know some other theologians that didn't have English books. But from what I hear from him, yes, there are Greeks today and in the church also that kind of hate everything Western. And I think Romanides is also descended from Cappadocian Greeks, maybe as also Saint Paisios is. Maybe that's how he got influenced against the Westerners. I mean,
A lot of his theology is better than some people think. Like it's not all. He's wrong on some stuff, but it's not all wrong. So
maybe he had some fanaticism, against the Westerners, and also a big rift in Greek history that it's not talked about a lot is the Fourth Crusade.
Yeah.
That changed a lot about how the citizens of the what we call today Eastern Roman Empire. They didn't call it Eastern; they just called it. They actually used a lot of Byzantium, the word Byzantium. They used it. It's not very wrong to use it. And yes, after the Fourth Crusade, a lot of the lands that non-Greek speaking population lived got outside the control of Constantinople, and the actual Greeks kind of aligned themselves with the word Hellene more.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm going to let the next caller in because I don't have too much time left, but thank you very much for calling in.
Yes, thank you.
Please feel free to call in again in the future, okay?
Yes.
Nice to meet you. All right, Ken, you're here.
Yo, what up, Jim?
How's it going?
Yeah, so there's this there's this guy I've been following for like probably like 2 years now, ever since I was like a Protestant, right? And this guy, he looking at it now, it's just kind of funny because he claimed number one, he claims he's a prophet, but he does keep like weird record. I know this is unrelated to the topic, but he does have like some records on his Facebook post. He's also what is it? A Trinitarian, so that's kind of decently normal. He's also a Judaizer. You want to know his name?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, his name is Ty Jackson. So if you want to dive into some interesting stuff, you can look up his name.
I will definitely check that out. Thank you very much. And another person.
Yeah, no, because no one seems to like, like try to like refute him or anything. They just let him like go by.
Well, the problem is sometimes when you do a refutation, it gives these kind of weird people attention, and then like most people might not have cared, but now if I bring them up, like, I'll look into it. But if you
he has an audience. That's the thing too.
Okay, all right, yeah, I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah, his name is. He's actually in Chicago too. Tai Jackson.
Got it. I'll check that out. Thanks, man.
All right, man. Thanks. Have a good night.
You too. All right, so thank you everyone who called in today. I'm gonna read the last few comments and then that's it. A few of them passed by me. So Demetrios Levi says, Byzantine Roman identities, Greek ethnic and culturally, Roman politically, Orthodox Christian religiously. They talked about their ancient ancestors constantly. Yeah, but that's the thing, like you're separating Roman from Orthodox Christian. They didn't see it that way. They saw Orthodox Christianity is the Roman imperial religion. And if you go against the Byzantine Empire, you are against the Orthodox Christian religion. Now that pittered away like into the year 1000 and onward. But before that time period, you were either part of Rome, which is Orthodoxy, or you're not. You're not like, hey, Rome sucks, but I'm Eastern Orthodox. That's not how it was. That's why in Arabic today, they refer to the Greek Orthodox and the Greek Catholics as Rum. It just means Roman. Or in English, we call them Melkites. It means they're following the emperor. It literally means imperialist. So that's what it used to mean. And in the Quran and the Hadith, every time it mentions the word Roman, when either Muhammad or any of his Hadith writers are writing about the Romans, Rum, it means the Byzantine Empire. So no one is denying Greek. And we're kind of getting caught on a word concept fallacy here. The Eastern Romans clearly wrote and spoke in Greek. And they knew that their ancestors used to read Aristotle and Plato and Odysseus, Homer and stuff. But the thing is, the Byzantine Empire completely outlawed actual metaphysical, philosophical Hellenism. They closed the schools of Neoplatonism. They fought the Neoplatonic religion. They fought Gnosticism. And in the 1200s and 1300s and so on, they exiled all the humanists who were reading Plato and Aristotle and threw them to France and to Italy and to Spain and to Germany. And so all the humanists went there. And surprise, surprise, a couple centuries later, the Protestant Reformation comes out of nowhere. Or maybe it wasn't out of nowhere. So you guys need to understand that the Byzantine Empire was fine with Greek. They spoke Greek, they wrote in Greek. But for them to be Greek also meant to be Roman. And to be Roman meant to be Orthodox. And to be Orthodox meant to be anti-Neoplatonic. Then why do some emperors talk of Romans or Bulgarians or Serbs? Yeah, it is complex, Demetrios, but you're also kind of, I don't know, you seem to like have an issue with this Roman identity thing. People became Romans, just like people became Arabs throughout time. It's very similar to the Latino or the Arab identity. You don't have to be a 100% Greek from Athens to call yourself Roman. So when they say the Bulgarians or the Serbs, these are people that they viewed as savages from what they assumed was an inferior culture that they were fighting. So their culture, Greek culture, was better than Bulgarian culture, and that's why they were fighting them. That's what they viewed themselves as. Now, a guy who's Slavic and moves to Asia Minor, speaks and learns Greek, marries a Greek woman and has Greek kids, nobody's going to keep calling him some Scythian primate or something. They're going to just call him a Greek. Likewise, a lot of the people called the Hellenistic philosophers were themselves not 100% Greek. So all I'm saying is this idea that it's a 100% ethno thing is not 100% true. people from Greece called themselves Greeks. They also knew they had a Roman identity. You could become Roman. You could become Orthodox. You couldn't really transform into a Greek, but you could join that culture. So there. What do modern Greeks think about Moscow being the third Rome? I don't know if Greeks agree with that. They would just say the Byzantine Empire died and that was kind of it. But yeah. In all government documents of Byzantium, they refer to their empire as Roman, not Byzantine, until May 29, 1453. I don't think the modern Greeks really espouse the idea of Moscow being third Rome. I agree. I don't think they really care about that, to be honest. But yeah, the Roman thing is complex. You're right about that, Demetrios. But just because they call a Bulgarian a non-Roman doesn't really mean, a Bulgarian could become Roman, but they weren't a Romanized people. He says, I agree. I think it's difficult to write instead of speak. My apologies. No, that's fine. I was probably reading too much into your text anyway. But yeah, so that's it, guys. I think it's pretty interesting to understand. So those of you who are new here, we talked about the Greek Orthodox Church, Father John Romanides, Patriarch Bartholomew, Hellen versus Roman identity took up like half of the stream. People kept calling in to talk about that. But as for the state of the Orthodox Church today, which we covered a few times, it is on a liberal trend, which we spoke about. Maybe not the church itself, but some of its representatives, and definitely the actual government of Greece is very secular. Now, the church itself is a secular. No. And the church anathematized a lot of people who voted for LGBTQ policies. So to sum up everything, I would simply say, there are many clergymen, there are many monks that are holding on to real theology, but the nominal Greek has become more liberal than he used to be. But at the same time, Orthodoxy is important in Greece. And this is where the confusion gets. Greeks have a better church attendance rate than Russians. But also, there are a lot of Greeks who might love Orthodoxy, but they view it as a liberal religion. Like they'll say, I'm a liberal, and Orthodoxy agrees with my values. So Orthodoxy is an important thing for a Greek, but liberal Greeks will still be Orthodox. It's not like here in America, right? In Protestantism, you either agree 100% with, the literal plain reading of the text, or that's it, you're a Catholic. Whereas, even though that's changed a lot in America itself, but historically it's how it used to be. Whereas in Orthodoxy, you have a Greek person who is going to always identify Orthodoxy with Greece and vice versa. So a liberal might not just go, hey, screw you, mom and dad, and leave the church. They would stay in the church. They would just try to live their liberal life while being Orthodox. So that's something to look out for. But overall, I don't think that it's as dismal as people are saying. Greece is not a super hyper-liberal country. It's still a patriarchal country at its root, but the younger generation, like many others, the internet and other things is becoming heavily westernized. You could even say the same amongst people in Moscow, for instance. So USAID did, in fact, get its hands on Greece, but it didn't do as much damage to the churches as it is attempting or had attempted to do in Ukraine. So that's kind of it. Thank you for everybody who calling in. Check out my previous stream on the state of Orthodoxy in Russia today. This was about Greece today. We're going to do one about a variety of other countries, at least the ones I'm knowledgeable about. So I'm not going to do one on like a land that I'm not that knowledgeable about. All right, well, thank you guys for calling in. I'm going to add my closing scene, and that'll be it.
Freakiness is a part of life. Original Baramonga along with the two bad, wicked youths of rap. Not a mercy, whoa.
What's the business? Talk paper when I'm riding by. They know it's drizzle, eat the truth off the east side. I know who ain't got my money because they ducking high. I grind for me and mine. I got the green light. I got to get it how I live it. That means front line. I got the zips, I got that soft.